All right, a big hey now. Let me see somebody in the chat. Give me a heads up that you can hear my sound okay. See if I can do that before I get too far into this. And welcome. Welcome to another Thursday. Woo. All right. We're good to go, Dewey. Thank you. All right, so we're going to do a little quickie on the Actuator HEX, Glenn. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in JDub. And we'll see how this one turns out. So what's the topic today, man? Things are pretty quiet overall. I mean, ecosystem's pretty quiet overall. This particular stream is we're going to highlight HTT opportunities, and I want to talk a little bit about liquidity and just show what's out there for the liquidity. Now, some of my long-term followers might be like, Crispy, why do you keep making all these actuator streams? And I won't always just make actuator streams. I'll make other streams as well. And specifically, I need to get another HEX T share report in the hopper that's coming. Just haven't done it yet. I've been working on data models and all that kind of stuff. But I think the primary reason that I'm talking about Actuator is because of its relationship with HEX. And I get that from a maxi point of view, I'm walking the line. Sure. I got that. I mean, if, really the simplest thing to do, guys, in crypto is, this has been my observation so far, is just simply get something that you like and hold it for a really long time. And the value can go up if it's something worthwhile, right? And even though you might pick on a bunch of those tokens that are out there, what worked for Bitcoin? You just got some Bitcoin held onto it. What worked for Ethereum? You just got some Ethereum held onto it. What worked for XRP? Yes, I said XRP. There was a time when I bought XRP for 12 cents. What worked? Getting some, holding onto it. So in very simple terms, and this is one of the lessons that Richard tried to get across to all of us early, is time in the market matters. It does matter, right? Because things get crazy the more people pile in. That's where the additional value comes from, the storage of value, and that's why the prices go up. What doesn't work so great is really short time frame trading, right? So time in the market. And then, of course, for those of us who are around early or have studied Richard Hart's HEX project, you know that HEX was all about an extension of how do you get people to go into HEX and hold on to their HEX longer? And that's, of course, staking, right? And that's the staking model. So in the HEX ecosphere, if you want to be super maxi, I mean, yeah, simply you buy HEX and hold it. You don't do anything else with it. You just hold it. You wait for better prices. You wait another 4 years, 8 years, 12 years. If crypto goes the way we think it's going to go, then the value goes up over time, right? And 100% you got to believe in something. And I, after a while, I got tired of the whole thing of having to justify even to myself that I'm in crypto. Why am I in crypto? Well, I already am, so I believe it. So let's just move on. You got to believe in something if you're doing it. And that is a Sami quote. And then when you get to the chain level, you got to believe in the chain you're in. Otherwise, why are you here? And so I'm in Pulsechain. So it's not a question of do I believe in Pulsechain? I believe in Pulsechain. And then, and so on and so forth, till I get to the whole HEX. And the whole HEX idea was how to help the little guys get into something, hold it for a really long time, and therefore benefit, right? It didn't mean that there wouldn't be other types of people doing other types of things. And sometimes we get that mixed up as maxis, right? Because you're like, my way is the only way. But you know what? You need holders, you need stakers, you need people who are going to degen, you need people who are going to trade, you need people to scalp, right? Otherwise, what's the whole point, right? I mean, you don't have the activity on a chain or on a token without all of those elements, and maybe more, some that I'm missing, right? So that gets us all the way back to HEX. So sure, if I was if I was just talking to somebody, I do talk to new people, right? I would be like, hey, you just get some HEX, hold it. But man, they don't want. But most people don't want to wait 4 years, 8 years, right? And when they hear about crypto, they're like, I want to put my $100 in. I want to get my $100,000 out. When will that happen? Is that next week? You know. And really, the game is about accumulating units in value over a very long time. You know, sometimes you are pretty lucky, right? And if you were the guy who got some Doge right before Elon, or you were picking up the SHIB for pennies, well, pennies by the thousands, right? But anyways, there are times where there's just market forces outside of your control. But in general, it's about getting in earlier and holding for longer than the other guys, right? It's just how it tends to work out. All right, so we have this excellent HEX opportunity, right? Which is like, hey, I'm going to just get some HEX, hold it, and wait. And then you have staking, right? So you can stake your HEX and put your HEX in and earn rewards on top of it. And I love that model. Yeah, I was super disappointed, said so many times, that the APRs have adjusted based on the OA staking, but I get it. Rigging HEX for battle, rigging it so that, not rigged isn't a negative, but setting things up so that HEX will survive no matter what happens. There's no whale that's going to come in and mess with HEX. I mean, you could do it on the surface level. It's not like a pot of whales is going to come in and buy so much HEX that they tear it up, because they'd have to buy it first, and that would increase the price. And if you were already in, then you're already enjoying that, right? So you have that opportunity. All right. So that gets me all the way to, what am I talking about Actuator for? Well, I've been talking about staking HEX for a long time, and doing things with HEX peripherals for a long time, or derivatives for a long time, and I think that's still viable. I mean, HEX, HEX rewards for mining / staking, whatever you want to call it, we did competitive with treasuries, right? And so that's that. Believe it or not, at 4% ish, is a stronger argument than having much higher APRs. It's something the community has argued about for a long time. Even Richard had talked about it, because price appreciation is king when it comes to crypto, right? I mean, it's not, I can get 15% a year, 20% a year or something, but that's not the same as 100x, right? 10x. People are more excited about the possibility of 10x than, hey, I'm going to double your money in 7 years, right? I mean, it's just how people are built for this stuff, right? So that being said, yeah, I watch the HEX staking pretty closely, and I recognize that a lot of people hold in liquid because they want the optionality, the flexibility. They want to get out whenever. They're hoping that there's going to be a God candle or two, and maybe a God season, and they're going to go ahead and withdraw and get out, right? So they're holding liquid. I can't think of any other reason you'd hold liquid, right, besides that. And along with that, people have not been staking as much as they have in the past, right? We see the T-shares. We can go watch that. When I do the T-share report, we'll dig into that a little bit further. But we're just not getting that. And we're not getting, like a substantial amount of renewal on T-shares. It's kind of status quo. So 100 of them end, and, perhaps maybe, 50, 60 start, 70 start. And but they're not coming in predominantly at really long levels. They're coming in at much shorter levels, meaning that they're staking out a few years at a time, nowhere near a 15-year stake. I haven't checked in the last few days, but I think we were on track for like 100 stakers Quattro Cinco this month, including the HSIs. So that's a pretty small number in the crypto world, right, overall. So all that being the case, right, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for HEX, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for price appreciation. I mean, certainly as much opportunity as in a lot of other places, probably a lot more with everything that we have that can go on. And that brings me all the way to Actuator. So with Actuator, we have this opportunity to extend the HEX ecosystem, and it's already been extended. I mean, I didn't create create the thing. I'm not a founder, I'm not part of the team. It's there. Somebody built this. So Actuator is here as a tool. And it took me a long time to get my head around it, which is why I'm streaming about it so much, because I'm trying to share as much of this knowledge as I can and as possible. So the protocol is set up in such a way, and you have to go do your own research, go look at the documents. But I mean, I don't know how much closer to HEX you can get than being immutable and having everything transparent the way Actuator.Finance is, and have the audits done, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's all there. And in fact, it's not like another token where you go back it and you're trying to make price go up through marketing and all that other stuff. It is HEX. So HTTs are HEX. And the HTTs, simply put, are a way for people who want to mint them to get their hands on their liquidity early. And there's a whole bunch of scenarios we've been talking about in the chats about that. And so I see the Actuator.Finance as a potential route. Maybe it won't be the only route. Maybe I'm wrong. But I see it as a potential route for a lot of larger players to come in and be able to trust an ecosystem where they have a lot of flexibility without having to lock up their HEX and just come back in 10 or 15 years, right? So again, that's at odds with our original thinking, I think, at least my original thinking about HEX. But times change, right? Points of view change. And we have different things available to us now and things like having a stake that can be used for collateral. Yeah, it took me a long time to warm up to that, but I've warmed up to it pretty good. I guess I'm doing these streams, right? So I see Actuator as a natural extension to that. And so what I'd like to point out today are a couple elements of that I think are super interesting. Now, I've been doing these streams, so I'm not going to try to cover everything every stream. So I want to dig right in and specifically talk about the HTTs and the opportunities that we see today, because there's some stuff that I think would benefit me, right? Because I'm like, maybe I ought to go get more HTTs. I'm already exposed to it. I mean, there's a thing about, keeping a balanced portfolio and all the rest, but an HTT can be swapped at any time. You can get in and out at any time. And so we have these folks out there with a lot of HEX in their wallets, liquid, that aren't doing anything with it. So the very first thing I'd point out is, hey, listen, there are HTTs that are at a pretty big discount. So we can look at an HTT 3000, for instance, right here. And we can see that it's discounted almost 20% against HEX, meaning it's the cost of it is about 20% less. But we know that when 2.3 years pass and you get to the redemption date, that it will be 1 HEX. And so we know right away, right now, if I go swap for a 3000, that my total return in terms of HEX is 25%. I mean, that's how it is right now. I know that that's the case. So if I have HEX that's in my wallet that's doing nothing other than being liquid, and everybody has their own certain situation, right? So there's reasons people would stay liquid and not swap. I get that. But assuming you have it liquid and you're willing to swap and you're willing to wait for 2.3 years to get the full value of the redemption, you essentially can get a return of almost 25% at this point. Pretty crazy. So HEX that I have that's earning 0% because I want it to be liquid can give me a total return to 25%, which is a fixed APR right now around 10% at these current values. So then the question is, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't people just do that? And that's really the basis of this conversation. Is there are times when these HTTs are so cheap, it's like, why wouldn't you take dormant HEX and do that? Well, one of the reasons might be you want to be flexible and be able to get out early, blah, blah, blah. But remember, the primary liquidity with an HTT 3000 is HEX. So you should always do your own research. It's DeFi. People got to make their own decisions. But if HEX goes up, 10x, HTT 3000s are going up 10x. If HTT 3000s get sold off in a different ratio than HEX, yeah, it would change and it wouldn't be exactly the same. But the point is the HTTs are going to go up in value with HEX. So some people evaluate this as an opportunity to be able to get even more HEX or value out of their HEX and still exit during a top, right? And how that would work is as the price is going up of HEX and the HTT 3000 is going up, well, when you get to the point where you want to take profit, you just take profit in HTT 3000s. And when you do that, yes, it will affect the pool. It'll change the situation for everybody else, but it doesn't change the fact that that is available. And so the thicker and the fatter the LPs are, the more opportunity there is for people to take advantage of those types of things. So let's go look real quick at the LP. Let me close this guy out. We're going to go over to the pools. All right, so this is a pretty significant amount of LP. I say it's a lot because I mean, they're obviously within the system. We've got some tokens. We got a lot more than just $98,000, but $98,000 is pretty thick for the HTT 3000s. And I just showed you the discount, and you could probably get away without significant slippage with a $2,000 swap value through the pool. But the percentage is the discount's 20%. And even using like a conservative benchmark, it should be about 10%. So there's like a 10% gap. So, the market, in my opinion, should be valuing it at a 10% discount or less, but is valuing it at a 20% discount. And so that opens up an opportunity to get, more of the HTT 3000s. And of course, if you go down that road and you want to go further with it, this is what some of these other streams I've done talked about. You can actually go and say, okay, well, I want to go ahead and put that in the pools, but I also want to farm it. Well, on top of everything else, right now, at least with the HTT 3000s, I could turn around and take the 3000s, put them up in LP with HEX, and earn an additional 16% APR. Yes, it comes out in the form of actuator tokens, which would then have to be swapped for more HEX or some different value if you're not staying in the system with it. But I mean, that's pretty juicy. That's pretty juicy. I mean, if you're already saying, you can earn a good 10 or 12% plus 16%. That's a pretty good value on something that I normally would just be keeping in my wallet. All right, so this 16% APR. We go back over to the dashboard real quick. If I was coming in brand new into the 3000s and I was just swapping for them right out, I'm getting a 10% fixed APR right off the bat for the trade. And then on any HTT 3000s I put in, I'm going to be getting that additional percentage. So it'd be the 10%. Oops, wrong one. 10% plus the 16%. So that's 26% APR on the HTTs if I go all the way to farm it, and then 16% on the so 26% and then 16% on the HEX portion. So some sort of a blended rate of around 20% APR for the next 2 years if I'm willing to hold it. And then if for some reason that slug of HEX is something that I want access to sooner, well, what do? Remove my farm, break down my LP and sell it. Right, that's what I would do. Swap it on the market, try to catch the high. So it's available to you. Probably the limiting factor at the moment would be when we look at these pools, like for the 3000. Well, it's $98,000, right? So we do need additional adoption, which will continue to push these pulls in the upward direction, or price appreciation. Price appreciation HEX. I mean, if HEX doubles, this doubles, right? So it'll be $200,000. So that'll move pretty fast. But yeah, I mean, the opportunity is new right now. It's currently for smaller to mid players, but I think with the growth of the system, it starts becoming more and more appetizing to the big whales and sharks. Now, if you are a big whale and shark out there, yeah, this is something I'd say take a look at, because this could change your whole approach to your portfolio and give you a much different way to manage your overall portfolio and to actually earn, rather than having the only option being to sell down the HEX, at least directly, anyways. So then, taking a look at the deck screener screen. Now, this is a little tip for everybody else who's out there that's watching this. And let's see, I actually don't ever move these, so I guess I won't try to move them around right at the moment. But I'm hoping you guys can see on my screen the liquidity as it's showing. Let me check here and see. Okay, so you see the market cap over on the right and all that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 3000s first. I'll go to this screen because I'll make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Oh, went too far. All right, so here's this HTT 3000 rounded up. Liquidity is 100K. Check out the market cap, 94K. All right, so what does that mean? That means that this particular LP pool is currently over-collateralized. Why is that important? That is important because it means that for a given size anyways, your slippage and price impact is not as severe, right? So when you have a liquidity pool that is greater than the market cap, it gives you some pretty good stickiness, and at least gives me some belief that I'm going to be able to get back out of this right now if I wanted to, and I'm not going to, might be a waste of gas, but I can get in, get back out, and I'm probably going to suffer very minimal price impact or value change, right? And that's important when we're take a look at these things, right? So we can look at each of these HTTs, and we're going to see they're the same type of situation. Look, HTT 4000s, $33,000 in liquidity, $17,000 in market cap. That's the 4,000s. The 5,000. This can be the same for each of them. The 5,000, 128 liquidity, 98K in market cap. All right, so you can see all of these are inverted. They're all inverted. 55K in liquidity versus 29K for the 6,000s. Let's see, 7,000. Where are you? Did I lose you? 7,000. 192K in liquidity, 124K in market cap. And so what we have is an inverted liquidity value, right? Which just indicates that it's highly collateralized. Now, in certain situations, when you look at that, it can mean more or less to you personally, but mostly it means a lot to you, particularly if it's like a locked type of a pool. For instance, pumped out tires, right? It's a big deal when they're inverted with pumped out tires, because nobody can remove the liquidity. The other time it's super important to you, I think, is when we're talking about something like this, where you're highly incentivized to keep your farms in place, right? So the likelihood that this liquidity will disappear is very, very low, right? So it's very thick. And it's available and it's there. And as the ecosystem grows, I would expect to see that liquidity thicken up even further. Now, when it does that, if there is like a severe run on HEX, we're going to have to watch and see what the ratios do. Well, I'm guessing that we're going to maintain this over collateralization for a long time. And then just to compare it to other tokens, let's just look at HEX by itself, just to give you an idea what the norm is. This is the HEX to Pulse, 2.1 million in liquidity to 3.87 billion. Now, I'm not saying that's bad. What I'm saying is this is a different condition, right? I mean, It's a very small ratio in comparison. Instead of being over collateralized, it's collateralized. I wouldn't say necessarily it's under collateralized. There's another HEX pool, 1.2 million. Is that the same one? I don't think so. Let's see. Did it move on me? No, this was V1, 2.1 million to 3.87 billion. This is the V2, 1.2 million to 3.87 billion. And you can go look at other tokens that are out there. Let's pick one off the list. Let's go. I love my X game. Let's go look at X game. X game pump tires token, of course, something that Firewhale launched. Liquidity, 415K, over 13 million. So you see how the liquidity is less, and this is pretty normal. I'm not picking on X game. Let's go look at another one. Let's look at the Peacock. I'll look at the Peacock. 215 million versus 8.8 million. So what I'm trying to convey here is that when we're looking at the actuator, the actuator LP that's out there, it's pretty thick. Yeah, Dewey Helgo is thick, man. It's one of the thickest. Let's see who we got out here before we wrap up. I got a couple questions. All right, I saw the Hex Clan and the D and the NJ Dub. Let's see. Pulse Ray. I know you like that actuator, Pulse Ray Vision. Me too. My Dark Man. The dark guys from Anti-Gravity Saga. All right. Yep, you save themselves from themselves by selling early. Yeah, people do that, unfortunately. All right, here's a good question for Pulse Ray. Why do you think the OA didn't use actuator? I think he's got I think the OA has bigger fish to fry at the moment. But Richard has come out and talked about a lot of these types of things that we're talking about. So there were a few streams. There's at least one stream where he got into the whole price appreciation being greater than reward level, and that if he was to do things differently, I'm not going to quote him exactly, he might have aimed for a lower APR overall, not necessarily a 369, but percent inflation, but and how the system was set up. That was a few years ago that he did that. There was also a discussion that he had gone through where he actually said, I don't know if he changed his worldview, but remember the HSIs were also brand new to us. It was so foreign, it was like counter to our community at that time, right? It took a little bit of time for people to get over it. But he even started talking about NFTs and the use of NFTs to store value and things like there being stakes that are wrapped up in NFTs. So yeah, Pulse, right. I usually leave the dumpers out in the conversation. But that's true. We need dumpers too, because that is how crypto works. Dewey's saying the evolution of HEX is a blessing to the community in terms of like actuator, and I think it's one of several products that are out there right now, and I do think it is a really good one. Let's see what else we got. Yeah, I just kind of going through not each one individually, Dewey, but I agree with the size of the TradFi market where it could actually come in and really evolve this playing field and what we're doing. Because essentially, you could really make the statement, like I'm feeling pretty strongly, like there's times when I would do stakes that are less than Quattro Cinco, but now with all the tools available, why would I ever do anything other than a Quattro Cinco stake? So even if I'm just doing native stakes, if I already have a ladder set up, I'm like, just take advantage of it, do the Quattro Cinco, I'll get my calm that way, the communists for doing the native stake. When I'm talking about other stuff like using actuator, etc., why would I do anything other than a Quattro Cinco? There's some conditions, like maybe I want to do something that's really short term, maybe I do that. But otherwise, if I'm just building out my my portfolio, I can mint, I can do a Quattro Cinco and mint HTT 6000s. I can do a Quattro Cinco and mint HTT 7000s. Why wouldn't I do that if I was going to do it that way? If I wanted access to the liquidity, that is. And again, there's a valid case for just doing nothing but holding your HEX and waiting, but you could do it that way for sure. And I know you picked up on this because you had said it a couple times. This is what I keep saying is the gigantic size of traditional finance money can find this particular actuator market very lucrative when they verify the value of the immutable code. And I think that's very true. I think there's a couple things going on here is that with extreme price appreciation, this ecosystem will be huge, right? I mean, 50 million, 100 million, that's pretty big to me, right? I think it's big. And with additional adoption, it could be even bigger, right? You just make up numbers 3 to 4 times, 5 times the size. Yeah, I think there will be a place for people who are willing to do things like curve trading, which is a different kind of trading than just your normal trading. It's very similar, but it all being backed by HEX, there would be times where somebody else is doing something that misprices an HTT to an HTT. And so why wouldn't I take a very expensive HTT like a 6,000 and buy with it a really cheap HTT like the 3,000 or the 5,000, right? And in that way, there are people who could be playing that game of going back and forth. Duke, I see you out there, buddy. Yeah, for the screen on here, one of the things I'm also trying to do with these streams is I'm trying to focus in on using the screens as is, right? They're the Actuator.Finance screens. So when I do this, all I'm really doing is hitting the control in my PC world, hitting the control scroll button and then moving it up and down. But I bet you the team could probably work on some things with the UI for everybody. All right, so Fast is here for the tech. I see that. I'm glad you're liking this stream, Stewie. I do appreciate your input. All right, yeah, fish and chips for everybody. And let's see. Oh, and the biggest thing that keeps coming to mind when we talk about risk, and I don't exactly remember when that would have come in, NJ, when you put this through. On the very high level surface, I know that it's the HTT contracts are immutable in Actuator, and I know they're backed by HEX, and so I know that if I go into an HTT, no matter what, I've got a HEX on the date, right, on the redemption date, and I can count on that. And I think that's a big deal, that I can count on the value being worth 1 HEX, right? Because I don't have to worry about all these other games that get played with other tokens and whatnot, with the trading and whatnot. Whatever happens with HEX is what's going to happen to the HTTs. Yeah, you're probably right about the context with the OA using the protocol. Yeah, in that way. I could see that as well, because when at the end of the day, once you start believing in a particular product, there are some considerations that you might make having to do with third-party risk. Another contract, another vector, right? Attack vector, that type of thing. Then there's also portfolio distribution. I mean, I've obviously am talking about it, so you would guess that I probably have gotten some HTTs, right? But my question keeps, why wouldn't I get more? Why wouldn't I get more? If somebody's willing to sell HEX, 10, 12% cheaper than it should be, then even with it after it already being discounted, why wouldn't I just go get that? So I have been doing a little bit of that myself. All right, and then just a couple more comments. Another from Dewey. Listening to your mind, show us this. What you got me looking deep? Yeah, I mean, I got a couple people who've come in based on these streams now, looking a little bit deeper, and I need help with the vision. So I mean, I didn't come up with all this. Obviously, I think it's obvious. The founders, Bill from Actuator, RJ, we've had them on the stream. They're really the ones that had come up with this. We got Boxy out in the chat doing a lot of the data analysis stuff, coming up with ideas and putting them out there. Basically, it's the hard part is kind of getting a really clear vision out. And that's why you keep hearing me talk about why wouldn't somebody just go get discounted HEX? If you like the HEX so much, go take the HTT off the market. You're going to get an extra 20%, 10 to 20%. So you get the extra 10, 20%. It will make that opportunity disappear, but you got it, right? So it doesn't affect whether or not those HTTs will be worth 1 HEX in the future. It's just you're the early bird that got the worm, And the thing about the Actuator protocol is if you try to lay out the whole vision, unless you are already doing something like bond trading in some other world, TradFi bond trading, there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it. All right. Well, my friends, I think that's it for this stream. A little bit longer than I expected. I'm going to head over to go listen to What the HEX. See if I can catch the TA with Toby over there. Thank you for listening. Spread this around to some other people. Some whales and sharks out there holding a lot of liquid, or even doesn't even have to be that. Just little guys too. All of us, right? Really have the opportunity. Spread it around to people who might be able to use it. They can go do the research at Actuator.Finance and make their own decisions. But I mean, all this information is available on their site, and you can go look. So, and with that, we'll be out, and we'll see you next time. So you guys stay crisp back.
Yo, T, urgent HEX buy signal. Charts flaming hot.
Golden ratio, huh? That's how legends stack T-shares.
Get them while they're crispy, folks. This window won't stay open long.
Stake smart. Win big. Time rewards those who act.
Stay crispy, Hexicans.
You gotta move it, move it! Feel the rhythm of the blockchain.